Hello, Fostering Inclusivity is our presentation. My name is Jennifer Caseldine-Bracht. I'm university faculty at Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at Purdue University Global. My colleagues are Ashley Leininger, university faculty, it's the same department, same university, and Tyra Hall-Pogar, assistant academic department chair in the same department at the same university, and we are delighted to be here. So this presentation, we will discuss how to create mindfulness and inclusivity in the classroom, learn new strategies to embrace experiences and empathy in our classroom environment to promote active learning, learn about an educational framework that integrates pedagogy, content, and technology in the online classroom, and learn tools for creating online discussion spaces that provide a framework for more respectful and in-depth conversations. So, what is TPAC? My background is in philosophy, and I've studied a lot of philosophy, but I had never studied pedagogy. So I started taking online classes and doing more to learn about how to be an effective teacher, and I ran across TPAC. This is a framework that claims we should develop our understanding of three different areas in education technology, pedagogy, and content. So these three things can create a virtuous educational cycle when they are used together in an online classroom. I'll explain how I use this framework in my own online classrooms and how this approach can foster inclusivity in the classroom. So in my classrooms, I've got Daniel Dennett's rules for critical commentary in mind. We try to start off where everybody feels welcome and they feel like their participation matters and is important to us. So here's his quote: how to compose a successful critical commentary. You should attempt to re express your target's position so clearly, vividly, and fairly that your target says, "Thanks, I wish I'd thought of putting it that way." You should list any points of agreement, especially if they're not matters of general, widespread in agreement, right? You should mention anything you have learned from the person, he says your target, but just the person you're engaged in conversation with. And only then are you permitted to say so much as a word of rebuttal or criticism. So we don't always do this exactly in my classes, but the idea is to say I appreciate your comment, or thank you for sharing a new perspective, or I liked what you said about X, Y, or Z. I didn't know about that. Have you ever thought about this kind of way of a civil discourse and discussion helps the approach of exploring the content of what we're subject matter experts and having the class feel more engaged and feel more comfortable participating in the discussions. So another thing I do is I have discussion guidelines that I go over with my classes. So I often encourage students to temporarily suspend their belief in the truth or falsity of things they've been taught or told, or simply come to believe, who knows how in the past, right? Maybe some relative told us something and we just have believed it without ever researching it. How can you know what you don't know? That sort of thing. So I say just how, I always give examples from my own life, how I've studied something and then made a mistake. One of my examples is just reading a lot of things about dogs and never reading "Don't give a dog a grape." So I started to throw a grape to my dog, and somebody screamed, "Don't give your dog a grape!" And they were, of course, right. I didn't know, but one of the things was I had thought fruit was good for dogs. I didn't know. I thought I had done my work, that sort of thing. We all make mistakes. We can't know everything. And sometimes it never even occurs to us what we don't know. So just remember to, redo your research. Remember to question things that seem so obvious to you. Look at both sides of the issue, or sometimes there's more than two sides. And really ask yourself, what is the strongest argument for the position? What is the weakest? If you disagree with somebody, still look at the best argument of that opposing position, and and explain what you disagree with it. Margaret Little talks about, saying, what do I fear about an opposing position? What am I unsure of about my own position? Anything to kind of create that space for dialogue to flourish. Many textbooks, they're not always diverse. They're getting a little bit better sometimes, but I supplement textbook information all the time to foster inclusivity. And I find using digital um, data sources, using archives, using our university libraries is very helpful to get more perspectives out there. Simply including more writers, more videos, more perspectives from all around the world, if you can, to the best of your ability, can help students feel more comfortable in the classroom. We have a lot of international students. We have people with different cultural backgrounds. And so if you take a traditional Western philosophy book, it leaves out a lot of components that are important to create that dialogue. So, add supplemental reading material, add those videos. I do a lot of optional stuff so students don't feel like their workload just keeps increasing and keeps increasing. But I'm mindful of, let's show that there's a bigger world out there beyond the textbook. We can point to other authors in our seminars, like I said, the digital libraries, the ones we have at our university. There's archives, there's newspaper archives too, where you can go back and find almost anything you want. Say, hey, what about this? What about that? To let people know that diverse perspectives are welcome. Content knowledge and diversity. So we're all subject experts in our fields to a point, right? So there's things we don't know. And I have used my own content knowledge to foster inclusivity in the classroom by broadening my content knowledge horizons. One thing I've really tried to do is globalize my bookshelf. You can type in like books around the world, philosophy around the world, whatever your field is, and find more resources. And just keep a note of those resources and try to read different books, different articles from different perspectives. I remember attending a conference at the University of Costa Rica, and there was a lot of Latin American philosophy there. And I was a little bit embarrassed. I did not know that much about it because, I'd gone through the PhD program, but that was not a focus of the universities I have attended. So making that effort to globalize our knowledge can increase what we can share from a diverse perspective in the classroom and foster inclusivity that way as well. Okay, using technology to share stories. Now, last year I did a mitigating stereotypes presentation here, and I talked a lot about when you're thinking about fostering inclusivity, it's important to think about stereotype threats. So I've got this example. But I also wanted to think through like perfectionism, imposter syndrome, a stereotype threat. All of these things are interrelated and can be a problem. So for example, there was this example from Claude Steele. He writes about a conversation with Carol Porter. She mentioned that organic chemistry is a challenging class at her university. It's an important class and can be a gateway make or break class for medical school. She said many white students, they try to find ways to make sure they don't fail, right? So they're like, I'm going to audit the class first, take notes. I'm going to work with other students, find out what they know, use their notes. Maybe even I heard I could take this class at a community college. It will be easier, that sort of thing, and see if we can transfer to Princeton. But what happens is if you feel confident in yourself and you don't have anything to prove to anybody, you'll maybe do steps like that. For our university, we have a lot of first generation students. We have a lot of students that are doing things in their own way for the first time. And so they may be susceptible to stereotype threat, to thinking I need to be perfect, to imposter syndrome, and that sort of thing. And that may actually put people at a disadvantage. So Steele talks about Black students often want to prove they can do it. I was a woman in philosophy. I wanted to prove I could do it. And so sometimes people will work extra hard to dispel negative stereotypes, like I'm going to be perfect, I'm not going to go take use this resource, right? And that can put us at a disadvantage. And so if we're fostering inclusivity and diversity, we want to address those kinds of issues as well, right? We don't want students to feel they have to prove themselves, which it turns out the research shows can be exhausting, self-defeating. Trying to disprove a stereotype, it just takes more work, it takes more mind space, and you're not focusing on the subject at hand as much as some other people may be. So we have the technology to easily share these stories and resources for any students that want more information about the topic. And we can access this material relatively easy. So this is another thing, thinking about fostering inclusivity. How can I use that technology? How can I use all these resources? How can I keep learning about this kind of research to help my students, right? To make it as even a playing field as I can as well. So, knowledge can be empowering, and we have an ability to share it with our students and to use this technology, this pedagogy, and our content knowledge as subject matter experts to really create a virtuous cycle of online learning.
So this brings us to the importance of inclusivity. So what is the sense of belonging? If you think about just going to work each day or going to school each day, being included is important. And understanding that what's often ignored is that diversity is not only a pipeline or recruiting issue. It's an issue of making the people who do make it through the pipeline want to stay at your company. This goes for teaching as well. It makes them want to stay to learn. You need to embrace change and new ideas. That being inclusive gives this sense of belonging to everyone. It gives them a buy-in to it. And learning styles are also different. You're going to have someone that might learn better through note taking, someone who might learn better through visual depictions of videos. Maybe it is through just sitting there and doing it themselves. That we can be inclusive without being exclusive, right? There's always these nuances of experiences. So like lived experiences matters, and they matter really for many reasons, not at least of which is only someone who has been through an experience. Maybe they know the nuances and complexities of dealing with it. Maybe they can present more information in the classroom through discussion. Maybe they can introduce more through seminar or lecture. That says, okay, I have dealt with this and this is my experience. There is value in that. And this is why it is so important to understand, even within our classrooms as educators, that we are sure there's diverse and we include the many voices of people who have been through different experiences, depict different experiences from each other as much as possible. And this goes into difference of teaching styles. That for me, my teaching philosophy is I want you to take something from this class, and 10 years from now, I want you to think back when something happens like, oh, yeah, I remember that Professor Leininger had mentioned this, or I remember from this class that I took, and it sticks with you. That we will have a multitude of learners, right? That there's always going to be these differences in people, these differences in experiences and ideas, and having these multiple differences of learners brings diversity and experience with it and ideas. And if you even recall your own experiences, these are going to be much different than anybody else, right? It doesn't matter if you might have been there with someone else. For instance, I'm an identical twin. We have distinct different memories from each other from the same events. Okay. That we recall our experience differently. We retain information differently. That knowing that even empathy doesn't necessarily always replace our lived experience. Like people who have been through something know the nuances of dealing with it. Even when we claim to understand what people are going through, we sometimes can hurt them by offering misguided solutions. So we have to be extremely um, cognizant of this. And we cannot always judge people who have been through different experiences in life by the same standards that we might necessarily judge ourselves, because the importance of exposure is through learning. Right? We can look at every experience in life serves a purpose, and there is a purpose in everything that we do learn. And this is where we come into the role of goals. Now, each of us will have different goals. We know the role of goals are for our students, or we think we do, right? They want to go through, they want to complete the class, they want to get the degree, they want to get the grade, right? But it's not necessarily that's the only goal, right? It is why we have to ask our questions, such as, why are they pursuing this degree? What changes in their life through this degree? What have they sacrificed or not sacrificed? What are they learning and taking with us? This is where we're like, okay, tell us about yourself. What are your plans after this class? What do you hope to learn in an introductory post, right? And each of us forms different goals, whether they're motivation driven or goal directed. I will complete uh my degree by this date. Okay, great. It's goal driven. Or goal directed. Maybe it's, thinking directed. Oh, I want to complete this degree because of the change in attitudes. I want to be more open minded about different groups, or I want to be more educated in public policy practices so I know how to be a more civically engaged individual, right? That goals can change attitudes, perceptions, and attributions. And this is really important to understand, because how we remember things, whether it's goal directed or motivation directed, this changes how we remember them later in the future. This is where the learning stays with us. Lifelong learning. It's applied later in life because of how we incorporate it within our goals. We also need to make our learning attainable, right? Because perceptions of what is attainable for people will be very, very vastly different too, right? We need to provide examples, a variety of examples, whether it's examples of, okay, here's a picture, or an example of here's a case study. We need to have the students apply their knowledge and ask questions. We need to give examples from our own lives. We need to give encouragement too. Yeah, that's not quite what I meant, but how about this? Or give encouragement. Oh, yeah, that's a really great idea. How about if you think, let's think about it this way? Or, yes, that is awesome. Can you tell me more about this? It encourages the students to critically think. It encourages them to get that, um, the feedback and critical feedback to them that will teach them, hey, this is a safe space and you can learn here. It it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to make a mistake. It's okay to think critically through this. And we provide within our classrooms a safe place to do that and try on different ideas, try on different hats, if you will. It's also a way to make it attainable. Provide openness. Be open about your own struggles. I know for me, I've struggled in different departments, in different programs that I've been in. I struggled in undergraduate. Um, be open about these struggles. Be open. It was very difficult for me to learn how to, let's say, make an outline. I really struggled with this, or I was never a really great test taker. I'm still a horrible test taker. I can sit there and tell you the answers and give you an essay and a long speech about it. But I won't necessarily be able to do a multiple choice question because I think, well, maybe they meant this, or what about this word? Maybe this word just kind of makes it wrong, right? But that's my struggle. But be open about these things because your students can then relate better to you, and be informative with your actions. The reason we do this is because X, Y, and Z, right? The reason that the purpose of this assignment is to la la la, right? Is to provide a greater understanding of the social structure. I'm a sociologist, so I think of social problems a lot, or I think of different ways that the group can interact. Okay. And so be informative with your action. Why are you doing this? Give them reasons to buy in. Say, oh, this isn't arbitrary. There's a reason why I said this. And this is the reason. And show excitement in the classroom. If you're excited, the students are going to be excited about the material that you give them. That's where excitement is important. I'm intrigued by this. Tell me more, right? If we think of our own perceptions and persuasions as a measuring stick, we can think of how we present things as measuring, okay, if I put it forth here as this is my perception, this is what I'm going to measure everybody else by. Know that your students have that too. And so be sure to understand your own biases here, right? Make goals more attractive. Change things such as gazes, look at the screen. Or, being on camera is just as important as what you're lecturing about, your seminar material. Knowing, giving visual clues such as, a color or an image or maybe a point of this is important. Even words such as, hey, pay attention here to kind of wake them and say, hey, if we're looking at our assignment, how about this? Hint, hint. I always say hint, hint, nudge, nudge, wink, wink type of thing. Like, you should probably pay attention to this. Might come up later, and give these cues to them. And then have a lot of the same cues so that saliency in your memory. This makes those memories or those ideas salient. Repeat the same sentence. Whether it's, oh, yeah, do you remember from week 1, we talked about, for instance, we talked about Aristotle in school. I know Jennifer is a philosopher, so we talked about Aristotle and his teaching method way back in week 1. And now we're going to apply that teaching method to how we're doing it within the classroom. Or now we're going to apply some of his thoughts on critical thinking skills right now. Okay, kind of throw it back and forth, make it all flow together better. And even with our perceptions of understanding that, okay, our memory is influenced by bias, understanding that and knowing that others are also going to be influenced by their own biases. So make sure you understand that those are there. Within your power presentation, use varieties of individuals, um, varieties of looks, religions, creed, right? Look at different items, represent things, and do your research beforehand. There are many times that I have heard students be like, yeah, I totally didn't understand what this meant until, you presented it this way. Or, oh, is that what that was? Oh, yeah. Know your current events. Know what's going on. Be sure that when you talk about something, you know what you're talking about, because it might stop with you. But there are other times that students will be like, hey, wait a second. Yeah, that's not true. And if they say, oh, that's not true, and they lose trust within your own teaching method, then you've lost them. So you have to be sure to do your research beforehand, know what's going on, know the hot button topics. And if you use pictures, be inclusive so that students can better relate. They can think more outside the box on things, and encourage, different belief systems, attitudes, and values, and show a different variety of experiences, because open-mindedness in the end is really the key. It promotes a safe learning environment. With the hot button topics, I have those all the time. Sociology, right? So those hot button topics, remind students before those come in at the beginning of class. Remember, we all come from different places, but we're all coming from a good place. When we talk, we're going to respect everybody. And if it's something that you can't, that you are very upset about, talk to me after class, but just be respectful of everybody else. Remind them of respect and allow uncomfortable topics to be talked about. Don't ignore the elephant in the room. You ignore the elephant in the room, it just gets bigger, right? So instead, talk about those issues. Allow a safe space for the students to talk about these issues and learn about others around them, and provide both sides of the story. Um, for instance, I have talked a lot this term in some of my classes about the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And I have done all sides of the story. Okay, There's a reason why it was overturned and put back to the states, but a reason why it was put to the federal government to begin with. I've gone over the court cases. I've gone over the reasons back and forth of, okay, maybe it denies healthcare, maybe it doesn't deny healthcare. Maybe it's this all individual aspect, right? And so be sure that you provide both sides of the story, and you are very cognizant of your own bias and prejudice. That when you provide both sides of the story, you just provide the facts, right? Because there's always two sides to every story. And if you're not willing to listen to both sides, don't be quick to make judgment on what you've heard, right? It's this whole idea of leaving it at the door, right? That we will have bias in our teaching, how we were taught, our background, our understanding of different topics, right? And there is going to be bias in some of the teaching, but giving the benefit of the doubt to your students. Don't be afraid to discuss these hard topics and ask questions too. It's really okay to say, I don't know. If you don't know something about a topic or you're not familiar with it, you're like, oh, I had no idea that was going on, or oh, I have not heard about that. Let me get back to you on that. Or let me think about it. And if I can't give you the answer, then I will send you an email and direct you to someone who can, right? You're not going to be the expert in everything, nor will you really be immune to mistakes, right? Follow this whole idea of what they call nice. Leave your negativity, impatience, and complaints and ego at the door, and you will have a nice day. And that goes really true for our classrooms, right? Is that as long as we leave these negativity and we're nice and we leave our ego at the door, we'll have a better day, right? Stay on top of the current topics. Be aware of the issues going on. Tie it back to seminar or tie it back to lecture for the evening. For example, when Halloween goes on, I always tie that back and say, oh yeah, have you looked at the costumes that come across? Well, what does it say about our society today? How is it reflecting or mirroring what is going on in maybe the political arena, maybe in our the social world around us, maybe within our community, right? Tie it back to the lecture. Always allow for flexibility of topics, because nothing's really going to stick unless students are involved and engaged with it, right? When students can relate to them and relate to the topics, and you allow that flexibility for them to speak and guide, it helps them retain and engage within the information, right? And provide opportunities for all the students. Uh, Allow them to, make sure you respond to all the students. Link questions in chat or announcements or emails. Allow them to stay on top of current events themselves, and to bring this into your own classroom. Say, okay, this is the current event today. Let's talk about this for 5 minutes. Or yeah, post something before, and yeah, we're going to have lecture soon. Make sure you're prepared with these topics. Or hey, about half an hour, we're going to talk about this. So if you're not familiar, just click on this link real quick and we can talk about it, right? And this is the way we can actually keep inclusivity within the classroom.
Thank you, Ashley and Jennifer, for all of the great points that you have made so far. As the assistant department chair, I not only look at this topic as a faculty member too in the classroom, but also amongst our faculty, and how we interact and how we grow. I feel like learning is a lifelong ambition. So we can sit here and learn too. And we really want to encourage everyone as we approach the end of this discussion to take a moment and reflect on what we've learned here today, and how we can foster these inclusive environments in our classrooms and even in our own communities. College is really a time for growth. It happens best in an atmosphere where there's mutual understanding. We all come from really diverse backgrounds and perspectives, and really, we believe that this diversity is one of our strengths, or can give us strength. So I encourage everyone to be extremely mindful, listen with empathy, and speak with care. Make an effort to get to know your peers beyond surface differences, that can really foster that inclusivity in your community. You can grow so much as an educator by learning from others around you. Be open to hearing different viewpoints. Jennifer definitely highlighted that. You can also challenge your own assumptions in the classroom and in your workplace. I I've done this multiple times as I have grown over the years. I kind of look at it sometimes topics as a fence. And I encourage my students to sit on the fence with me. And as we go through a discussion or go through a conversation, you can choose which side of the fence you want to be on. I freely admit that depending on the topic, I have gone back and forth on that as well. I think it's important, again, to be open, but maintain your confidence and your own self worth and make sure that you're extending that same confidence to others. Our classroom should, again, be a safe place for respectful dialogue. Everyone needs to be valued and be heard. I think that openness allows the conversation to happen. As I'll talk about in a minute, it's always important to consider your words and how your actions affect others. Obviously, recording in an online environment and then us working in an online environment, our words are very, very important to us. I always look for opportunities to offer support and encourage people to not be afraid to speak up if they do feel in any way excluded, and to reflect on times. This is really that moment in the presentation where we ask you to reflect as well. There may have been times, I know I've done it unintentionally, but where we've probably excluded others in seminars or lectures or discussions and whatnot. I really think that growth happens when we go outside of our comfort zones. Being inclusive does take a lot of courage and commitment. I know that all of us want to do this and can work together because truly, like I said, that community that we're trying to build at our universities and in our classrooms will be strengthened by diversity and uniting each other. So I'm really, really proud of the conversations and the discussions that Jennifer and Ashley have brought to the table. So as I wrap up with these last couple slides, I do encourage you to think about how in your environment people could thrive. Take time to reflect. That's why I have the post-it note up there. I'm a firm believer in post-it notes. Write down a couple notes, think about them, share them with your colleagues, use this as a conversation starter, hopefully in your classrooms or in your community. Another really important point that we wanted to end with as we're talking about incorporating all that you've learned today into your institution and into your classroom is this idea of a psychologically safe environment. This is one where you feel secure enough to actually take an interpersonal risk. It's a setting where you are safe to speak up and ask questions, admit mistakes, offer feedback without fear of being embarrassed or rejected or punished. I think that those are really important points in the learning process. Um, Creating psychologically safe environment requires an effort from all of us. We do have to be respectful and open-minded and compassionate. We know our classrooms are made up of exceptionally talented individuals from diverse backgrounds. That diversity will enrich learning if we make space for everyone's voice. I encourage you to share your perspectives. Don't be afraid to disagree, as long as you do so in a thoughtful way. Listening when others are speaking is really important. I know as lecturers, we're kind of used to always being in front of the classroom, but I think that there's a place for listening as well when you're trying to be inclusive. Our goal is to make classrooms an intellectually stimulating space where everyone can have really profound discussions and that we can tackle these difficult questions without apprehension. But again, having that safe space really helps us all achieve so much more together. Opportunities for personal growth. College isn't always just about academics. It's a chance to develop life skills that will serve you beyond the classroom. I think a great place to start in building off of that idea of a safe space is building your vocabulary. We tell students starting in elementary school, right, that your word knowledge will boost your reading comprehension or your writing abilities or your analytical thinking, but really there's so much more nuance to that. Our words are so powerful. Inclusive vocabulary challenges discriminatory language and biases. It can be used to marginalize certain groups. It can be harmful, but also extremely powerful if we're, again, mindful and aware of it. Um, I think that building your vocabulary takes a little bit of effort and sometimes some training. Sometimes, again, that's where your colleagues can be a great resource, having open conversations using your new vocabulary. Um, uh, Jennifer talked about philosophy. Ashley talked about sociology. I'm a scientist. I always say that pronouncing some of those crazy bacterial names are hard to do. You have to practice it. I have to practice it as an instructor before I get in front of my students. I think the same thing can be applied here. Another area for growth is training. Training your empathy is something that I thought was really unique and something that I actually worked on in the past year or so. I would recommend Brian Stevenson's inspiring TED Talk on how empathy can drive social change. Really, by striving to understand others' perspectives, we gain insight into their struggles and we can then start to forge connections across our differences. It was really an amazing talk. It really helped me, and I hope it can help you reflect on how to nourish empathy as a practice in our classrooms. Lastly, building on what Ashley said, setting goals is really important. So, a lot of the conversations that we had here were about a greater understanding, but we really need to keep ourselves motivated in order to do that. So, again, I encourage you with you and your faculty to maybe set goals for each other, keep each other accountable for those, and continue the conversation. There are so many opportunities to expand our skills and continue to learn. And finally, as we wrap up, we want to thank all of you for your time today. We really, truly do believe that this is an important discussion that we need to have in order to be inclusive educators. I understand that trying new teaching techniques includes a large amount of vulnerability and risk. We do really hope to encourage openness in implementing some of the ideas that we presented here today, like fostering belonging, cultivating empathy, and promoting psychological safety in order to show a deep commitment to your students. We really do believe that when you make that effort in the classroom or even with your colleagues, where you show that all voices are valued, all identities are respected, and that your students will then feel much more empowered. We do believe you're sending a really powerful message. It tells your students that you not only care about them, you care about their learning, and that you want them to be safe and welcome. We really hope that together, not only at Purdue Global, but at institutions across not only our country, but the world, can continue to cultivate the diverse perspectives that we know are present, that we learn to respect and encourage and empower each student. We have included our information with the talk. So if there's any need to have any further conversation, please always feel free to reach out to us via email. And we really appreciate everyone's time and Rutgers for the opportunity that we had today. Thank you.